Hi friends, welcome back to Julia at Home. This is a video about a unit that we did on Native Americans in North America pre-colonization. So I know that's a mouthful. I thought it was really important that my kids understand that there were people here before Europeans came over, before we started studying colonization and all the things that happened thereafter with the American Revolution and the founding of the United States of America. I really wanted them to have that understanding. Before we start, I do want to touch on something. I want to emphasize that this is a history unit. So I'm going to be talking about Native peoples as though they're in the past, but I have learned from listening to and reading from Native peoples today that something they want all of us to keep in mind is that they are still here. Native people still exist. Their cultures continue. To that end, I'm going to quickly share this resource, The People Shall Continue, but also just as an educator and as a person, I think it's great. I try to listen to voices of lots of different people, and so there are really great books and even podcasts and things like that that you can read or listen to about Native people today. So I just wanted to put that out there, but with the note that this is me talking about a history unit. So that's why I'm talking about them in the past. The other resource I wanted to share with you before we dive into the unit is American Indians in Children's Literature. It's a website. It's run by Native people who comment on and share their thoughts on books on Native people. And because there's a lot out there that share stereotypes that are not accurate and harmful, and so I like to look at that to try to get to the best options to share with my children. Now, I will say that there are some books that I'm sharing here that not everybody in the Native community loves for various reasons. And I tend to overthink things, but where I've landed on a lot of thinking through this, I try to get the best resources I can, but I do find that my philosophy is that the teaching of the information and having a resource is better than not teaching it and not having a resource. And so if there's ones that are generally good but might have some flaws, I try to keep that in mind, and I might share, depending on what the flaw is, I might use the resource but maybe share just like let my kids know this might not be completely accurate or that there might be different thoughts on this. So that's where I stand on the issue, but I do think that American Indians in Children's Literature is a wonderful resource, and so it will be linked below, and while you're doing your own studies on this, I encourage you to check it out. The way I structured this unit was to go through different areas of the land. This is really focused on what is today the United States and Canada. We did cover the Aztecs and the Incas, but I think I'm going to leave that for a separate video. So if you're really interested in that and want to see that sooner rather than later, let me know below. But this is basically what is today United States and Canada. There were many different tribes and nations all over, and the way I kind of grouped them into areas of the country. So like there's like the Northeast or Eastern Coast woodlands, there's the Pacific Northwest, there's the Southeast, kind of the hot, dry desert area, there's like the plains areas, and then the Great Lakes are kind of lumped in a little bit. So I ended up going region by region, and we learned about some of the different tribes in that region, because a lot of them have things in common because they're living on the same land and kind of the same ecosystem. So we learned about the tribes in that area, and then for most of the regions, I had a few extra books and maybe an activity that we did. I'm going to start with my general resource books that I used. I have this Atlas of Indian Nations. It's a National Geographic, and I didn't really read this to the kids, but this was a really good resource to look at as a map and to just kind of see where the different tribes were. And I would reference it to make sure I was covering what I should. But it goes by region. There's the index there. It does list tribes and have information on different tribes, and it's really dense. If you have like high school students, this might be a good level for that, but I thought it was a really good resource to have, so there it is. This book here ended up being our main spine. This is A Kid's Guide to Native American History, and it also moves region by region. So this is kind of what I followed. You can see the index here has the different regions. Now, it is also a little bit dense, but I find not as dense as the Atlas, and I did read it to my children. There wasn't really long sections on each. It's kind of broken up, and then there's a lot of activities and other notes in here. So for example, this is the Northeast, and one of the activities is to make a corn husk doll. Honestly, this is not as historical as I was going for, but I did think it gave us a really good basis for each of the regions and kind of what the areas are like and what the different tribes there were like. A couple more general books. I have A Native American Thought of It. This goes with my whole, I really wanted them to understand that people were here and that they had their own inventions and their own way of life before Europeans came over. And I also really like the map in here. It's really pretty. So I think I had my kids copy that at some point. And it's really simplified, right? That's clearly not all of the native tribes that were there. And it goes through different, so this is like on clothing. So as we were going, we just read a couple pages a day. And this is, yeah, again, like really general. It will talk about, like, this is something like the totem poles are like a Pacific Northwest thing. It's not done all over the country. Yeah, so this is A Native American Thought of It. This is Native Homes. So what we did is we would read, you know, the different homes for people, the peoples we were learning about. This is a longhouse village, so this is going to be in the Northeast with the Haudenosaunee. So they were the people of the longhouse. Haudenosaunee is what we commonly refer to today as the Iroquois people. It's what they call themselves, their name. So I'm going to use that. And so we would go through, read this, and then I would have them do a drawing until we got to our area where we live now in Vermont. It's home, the original caretakers were the Abenaki people, and they lived in wigwams. So I did have them try to recreate a little model wigwam after we watched some videos on people building big ones. So that was kind of a fun activity they had to work together on. It turned out okay. I don't think I mentioned before, when we did this unit, it was the beginning of my son's first grade and my daughter's third grade year. So these resources are aimed at that level, but I think they can be used up through like elementary school and even into middle school. I also have this book here. This is Turtle Island, The Story of North America's First People by Eldon Yellowhorn and Kathy Lowinger. And this goes more through time than through, like, it's organized through time instead of by region. I'll show you the chapters here. But it does have stories, short retellings of stories of people from different nations. And this one here at the beginning, I really wanted to highlight because this is the story of Sky Woman. This says it's from the Haudenosaunee tradition. I want to say a lot of the tribes from the Great Lakes also have this version of the story, and it might be a little more widely spread than that. But it is the story, it's basically the origin story of this land, which the people called Turtle Island. And it's because Sky Woman fell through the sky and landed on Turtle's back, and other creatures come and put mud and everything on Turtle's back. It's a really good story to start with because, again, it's an origin story. There's a really short version in here, but we actually have heard an oral retelling of it, which I think is a wonderful way because a lot of these stories have been passed down just through the spoken word and not written. And so I will see if I can figure out where we listen to that and find a good version and link it below. But you can look for The Story of Sky Woman. Is a really good one to start with. Let me show you a little bit more about this book. It does have just basic information. Again, moving through time. This is about the canoe makers of Haida Gwaii 8,000 years ago. You've got the origin of the yellow cedar. So there's lots of different tribes highlighted in this. I did see some criticism from other Native people that some of the pictures in here might not match up well with what they're describing. And so I did end up mentioning that to my children. I think the resource is good enough that I'm still using it and sharing it with you. So this is Turtle Island. As I said, I kind of moved region by region, and I had a lot of books as usual, but I'm just going to share some of my absolute favorites with you. I have quite a few here that are on kind of the Pacific Northwest and moving even a little bit into what is current day Alaska and the peoples over there. And these are from Sealaska Heritage. And it's a baby raven reads. This one is adapted from a story by the 2015 Tlingit Culture, Language, and Literacy students. This is Raven and the Hidden Halibut. These are beautiful. They were a little pricey, but I think it's a really good cause to give to. So it has the actual, I'm not sure if I'm saying any of these correctly, so it might be worth it to go and see if you can find somebody saying some of these things. But it has their native names within in the context of the story. So there's this one, and I have a couple that I got from them. So in addition to Raven and the Hidden Halibut, I have Salmon Boy, and this one is a dual language book. Let me show you. So these pictures are beautiful. I think learning about people's stories and legends is a really great way to learn about who they were as well. So that's another reason I love these. And the last one I have from them is The Woman Who Married the Bear. There. So I won't give away what happens in all these stories, but I really enjoy them, and if you have some extra funds and you want to use them for beautiful books and a good cause, I recommend these. For the peoples in the Arctic, the Inupiat, I grew up learning the word Eskimo, and that is a word other people use for them, so they are the Inupiat. This is whale snow, and this is another beautiful story. It has Inupiaq language, that's what the language is called. It tells you how to pronounce a bunch of the words in here, which is helpful. And it's a story about a whale snow, about the people, they go out and they get a whale in the snow, and it feeds their whole community. And it's from the perspective of a boy. So that is whale snow. Moving way far south down into the southeast and central south of the country, of the current United States and the desert, this is a Pueblo Indian tale. And you can tell it's a lot different style, it's a lot warmer colors. So all of this just really tells you it gives you a feel for the people and where they were living. So that's Arrow to the Sun. This next one is a retold Cherokee story, The First Strawberries. So the Cherokee, I believe, were originally in the southeast of the United States. We often think about them being in Oklahoma and stuff because that's where they were moved. But they were kind of in the southeast area. And it's the Cherokee story, The First Strawberries. And I don't know about you, but I love strawberries, so. There you go, that's The First Strawberries. I'm not going to tell you the whole story of these. You're going to have to check them out for yourself. A group of people we learned quite a bit about are the Haudenosaunee, who created the Confederacy. And this was actually also inspirational to the founders of the United States of America. I believe Ben Franklin spent some time there and stuff. And it's a federalist system, essentially, that they formed with, I want to say, 5 different nations, and then I think a 6th joined later. I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And they were all fighting with each other. And there's a story of the peacemaker who came and united them. In the story, he had to fight a leader of an Onondaga village who really was, he's portrayed in the stories as really evil and having snakes in his hair and really divisive and causing a lot of fighting. And so the peacemaker ended up coming in, and he ended up kind of going around to all different tribes and gathering people to his cause, and they all kind of congregated together and ended up winning the day and forming this Confederacy. So that's the origin story of the Confederacy itself, and I have a couple great books on it. So the first is a chapter book. It's a short chapter book by Joseph Bruchac, and it's Peacemaker. We read this as a family read aloud, and it was wonderful. It's from the perspective of a boy, not the peacemaker himself. So yeah, it's really good. I liked it a lot. And then there's Hiawatha and the Peacemaker. I'm really sorry for the glare. Lighting's tricky. So this is by Robbie Robertson, who is a musician and songwriter, and David Shannon, and it comes with a CD. Is it in here? Yeah. In the back of a song that is really powerful and I absolutely love. So we obviously listened to that. We also read the book Hiawatha. It was one of the early and close followers of the Peacemaker, and he has kind of a tragic tale of losing his family, and with the Peacemaker ends up stopping this cycle of violent revenge that's going on, and helping to bring peace. So it's a really powerful and wonderful story. Now these two are just legend stories, myths from this area, from the Abenaki people. So we have the Sacred Song of the Hermit Thrush, which is just kind of a fun story, and the hermit thrush, fun fact, is actually the state bird of Vermont. So I definitely wanted to incorporate that. Okay. And this is, I'm sorry, I was just looking, the author is actually a Mohawk. He was adopted into the Mohawk wolf clan. So it might be a Mohawk, not an Abenaki story. We are on what was like Abenaki land they moved through, and then I can see the other side of Lake Champlain there was more Mohawk land. So we're kind of in the midst there. This is an Abenaki tale. This is the Hunter's Promise. And this one's fascinating. It's kind of, I for some reason wasn't expecting what happened, but I probably should have. So I don't want to give it away, but I love the pictures. It's illustrated by Bill Farnsworth. It looks like beautiful paintings. Let's see if I can find one more, as long as it, yeah, there. We won't give it away. And again, that is The Hunter's Promise, also written by Joseph Bruchac and illustrated by Bill Farnsworth, and it's an Abenaki tale. I also have these two books. These are Native plant stories and Native American animal stories, both by Joseph Bruchac, and they're a collection of stories from different tribes that have been retold. So it tells you the name of the story, and then the nation and the location of the nation. So for example here, Silver Fox and Coyote Create Earth, which is a Miwok tale from the West Coast. And this is not, it does have pictures, but these stories are all really, it's not really what I would call a picture book. The stories are pretty short. So like here's the beginning of one, and that's it. So we were able to incorporate some of these as well as we moved through. We also did incorporate a few activities. So I've already mentioned building a model wigwam. So I had my kids do that. They just collected sticks and leaves and bark and such from outside, and I had them do it on like a piece of cardboard, and they used some clay to join things together. I also got a couple resources from Nature Watch. I will again have them linked below, and one of them was a fire starting kit. It had a board and then a stick, and you actually have to like rub the stick into the board to make a spark and start a fire. And we all tried. We didn't actually succeed, but it was an interesting trying. We don't really have a lot of survival skills, so someday we might work on that a little bit more, but it was really interesting. I also got a kit from them on Native American games that just had some fun resources. We didn't actually use many of them, but I kept it, and so we might use it more in the future. I thought it was a really cool idea. It came with this little book that had stories that involved the games and sports, and then instructions on like how to play different ones. I think it would also be really fun if you're going region by region to look at some of the ingredients and the foods that they would have used at the time, like what is native to the area, and do some of that. If you are doing a unit on Native Americans, I would also look at what resources are in your area. We did there is a local museum that is not on Native Americans here, but is like one really close to us, but is like a history museum. They have an exhibit on the people here kind of going through time and what it was like, and they have artifacts and stuff. So we went to that. We had been before, but we went to that. And there's also some really great museums. I haven't been yet, but I know New York State has, I believe, the Iroquois Museum. Connecticut, I think the Pequot Museum is still there. I'm not 100% sure. I went there when I was a child. And then we actually, I'm going to talk about this more. I'll share what we did studying colonial America, but we did do a field trip down to Plymouth, Pawtuxet, and it was really great. They have an area for Pawtuxet, which has interpreters that are Wampanoag, and they had like a sample garden and a sample winter house and summer house, and the interpreters were so wonderful. And when I say interpreter, they unlike the people in the Plymouth village, they're not dressed in traditional clothing, but they're dressed in modern day clothing, but they had so much information, and they were so great talking to me and answering a bunch of my questions and talking to my kids. And I learned a lot about especially what they ate and how they grew. I found that really, really fascinating. And so I just want to say, you know, where you are, I would learn about what people's lived on the land you're living on and around your land, and also see if there's any resources like that. This past year, so I've really tried to do more field trips. Now we're getting out a little bit more, and I just find them so invaluable. I would also look online. So for us living here, we're near Lake Champlain, which is, it goes between New York and Vermont. There's a myth on how Lake Champlain became Lake Champlain. There's an Abenaki myth. And so there was a PBS video talking about the myth. So I'll link that below as well. Hopefully I can find it. We watched that. There's always more you could do on every subject, and each of us is only one human. Just trying to share some of my favorite resources, and if you have favorites that I didn't include but you want to share, please share them in the comments below. Don't leave a link though, because that kind of gets to spam, but if you just share what they are in the comments below, that would be wonderful. If you found this video helpful, like and comment, do all the YouTubey things, and I hope you all are well until we talk again. Bye, friends.